my son said to me, he says, "Thank you, Dad, for working out and doing what you do so you can be here with me." And that meant a lot, that I was 74 and I was able to drive up to St. George and meet my son who came out from the East Coast, and we golfed 4 days in a row and went for hikes in the afternoon after golfing. For him to say, "Thanks, Dad, I'm glad you're in shape so that you can do this with me," meant a lot. So.
Welcome to the Recover Life podcast. And for those who may not know you, would you just give us kind of a brief introduction? I saw you on Instagram. I saw your awesome videos, right? And we'll make sure to put a link to your
I'm having fun
channel
with
and
that.
everything down in the description there. But just maybe give a little introduction into who you are and what got you into this journey.
Well, Joe, first of all, thank you for inviting me onto your podcast. I love to talk about aging strong to live long. It's
Yeah.
kind of my motto, um, get strong and live long. And but I never exercised. I had a career working, raising a couple of children, and I worked long hours, and I was out evenings at events. I was in the public relations field, managing clients and traveling, and a busy, high pressure job for many years.
Yeah.
And I loved raising kids and paying attention to the family and working and providing for them. But one of the things that I never got to do was take care of myself and
Yeah.
exercise. And so when I was about 64 years old, about 10 years ago, I retired. At that time, I was working in education at one of the school district here.
Hmm.
And I weighed up close to 200 pounds,
Wow.
and I had a terrible diet. I think my favorite was stopping at McDonald's for a quarter pounder and
Yeah.
drinking lots of Diet Coke. And I loved drinking wine, and I had a wine collection at home. So I had some pretty bad habits. And I realized that if I was going to, be healthy and be a grandpa to be able to be around for a while, that I had to start taking care of myself. And I read a book called Younger Next Year. It's still around. You look it up on
Yeah.
Amazon, Younger Next Year, and it's written by a gerontologist and a guy who was into exercise, and I don't remember the authors' names. But
I'll look
one
it
of
up.
the things that book said is when you retire, your new career has to be your health and
Mhm.
taking care of your body, and you have to put as much effort into that as you did into your career. And then it talked a lot about the importance of strength training and the importance of diet, but just that comment about retiring and making your new career your health and fitness resonated with me. So I walked into 24 Hour Fitness, a big, chain, big box gym, and hired a personal trainer. And he got me, thinking about nutrition and lifting weights. And, I kind of realized I kind of liked that. That was kind of fun. So during those first few years, I went through a couple of personal trainers at a big box gym. Then
Mhm.
I went to a smaller, more boutique gym and did some group fitness classes, but always strength training. And enjoyed deadlifts and the bench, and kind of always enjoyed that. Then COVID hit,
Okay.
and that threw a lot of us off. There was years where what are we going to do? We're stuck at home. Well, I decided I had an extra bay in my 3-car garage. I started working out in my garage online. The gym had online classes, and then I started buying toys for my garage. I bought a cheap rack and a barbell,
Uh-huh.
uh, and some plates, and it's kind of become a hobby obsession. If you
Yeah.
look at my Instagram, you'll see all the toys in my garage, and that's been accumulated since COVID. So since then, I've gone through two different online training programs. I trained with Jason and Lauren Pack and their Rise program during COVID. And
Okay.
then I decided I wanted some more personal attention. And I trained with Digital Barbell, Blakely, and Jonathan Fletcher, and they're great. And I did one-on-one training with them, 4 times a week, weightlifting. Over that time, I went from 195 plus pounds down to 160.
I mean, you look
And
great,
uh,
honestly.
yeah,
When
and I started putting on muscle and got rid of the fat around my belly. Um, 2 years ago, I stopped drinking, which was a very hard decision
Mhm.
because it's so ingrained in our culture
Yeah.
that 5 o'clock glass of wine is something that I loved coming home and sitting in my backyard, and I'd go to events and enjoy 2, 3 glasses of wine, and I loved it. But I realized that that wasn't serving my health.
Mhm.
And so I did a sober October and a dry January and said I'm only going to drink on weekends. And, that took a long time to get that out of your brain, that addiction out of your brain. And then finally, 2 years ago, a sober October just kept going. So
Wow.
I haven't had any alcohol now for 925 days or something like that.
But who's counting, right?
Yeah, and that's something that has helped my health too. And it's just alcohol destroys your sleep, and it's
It does.
empty calories, and I just feel so much better. I realized I should have done it sooner. And I keep training, and I train 4 times a week with an online program. I like having a program that tells me what to do.
Hmm.
I go out there and I have a bunch of lifts and accessory exercises that I go through, and it's very rewarding, and you feel good afterwards. I now walk, so 10,000 steps a day is what
Good.
I averaged for the last 2 years.
Hmm.
A little bit down this year because of some injuries I've been battling, but you know, motion is medicine. Motion is lotion, and I
Yeah.
just try to keep moving. This year, I set a goal to start working on my mobility, because as you age, you not only lose balance, but I find that my mobility is not there. Just bending over, rotation, your how you can move your hips, and I can lift heavy weights, but I just don't have much mobility at all, and that limits me a lot in hiking and other things in life. So I'm working with a mobility coach online, and I train with her once a week. Allison Lee, she's in Colorado. She's wonderful. And so she's teaching me stick mobility and functional range conditioning. And I'm actually got a mace, and I'm trying to learn how to,
I saw
you
that.
know,
Yeah.
do flow. So, we'll see where that goes. But already I feel better in my hips, and
Hmm.
being able to move, and my spinal thoracic rotation, I think, is feeling a little bit better. So I think, and that'll help in lots of ways in my life. That'll help in being a grandpa, and in being able to move around, and I'm a golfer, so I golf a couple of times a week, and I don't, the rotation of a golf swing
Yeah.
is a limitation, and I'm hoping that'll help my golf a little bit.
So let
Um,
me ask
so
then, what would you say like you have gained so far from engaging in that mobility training? Because honestly, I've seen a little bit of you posting about it, but most of what I've saw previously was about the weightlifting, and that's a lot of
yeah,
the world I come from. But
right.
mobility is something that, you know, we worry about as we age. What do you think you've
Yeah.
gained in your life so far from just paying attention to mobility?
I fell on Christmas Day. I was going for a hike, and all of a sudden I tripped on a rock. I went down, sprained my ankle, a grade 2 sprain, and my back got
Dang.
got. And so January and February, I had really bad lower back pain and my ankle was swollen up. And that's about the time I started working with Allison. And I realized that my pelvic rotation, was swayed. As you get older, you lose your posture. So I really started working on pelvic rotation and hip mobility. And right now my back is feeling great. So I don't know what
Good.
to attribute it to, but I'm more aware of my pelvic positioning and posture and my hip internal and external mobility. So I think it's helping. It helped with my back pain. Um, I'm also learning about spine rotation and thoracic rotation, and I think that's really helping, as I said, with my golf swing and being able to move with a little bit more mobility. Um, and I think as I age, not only having muscle strength, but having awareness of the importance of balance and mobility really have to go hand in hand. And, as a physical therapist, I'm sure you understand that far better than I do. Um, but that's kind of what I'm working on now. I'm not going to give up the weight training. I love that. And I believe that, muscle is the organ of longevity,
It
right?
is. It
As
is.
Dr. Gabriel Lyons says in her
Yeah.
book. I love that. I love that quote. So I'm going to keep working on that, but also, work on improving my mobility, I think is important.
Totally.
Yeah, fitness is it's a full-time job. There is so much that we could do as we age in the fitness area. People like to walk. Pickleball is a big thing. A lot of my friends are playing
Huge.
pickleball. A lot of my friends, are golfers, and that's all they do. And I just like to tell people, you've got to build muscle. You're going to lose muscle, and playing pickleball 3 days a week or just walking is not going to help you retain muscle.
Mhm.
You've got to pick up some weights, you got to pick up some bands and do something to keep your muscle. And that's going to make you a better golfer, a better pickleball player, better at hiking. It all works together. But um, Joe, what did it for me was to accept an identity that I was going to be fit and healthy and strong, and that was part of my identity. And posting on Instagram, I think, is part of that because it's as much for me as it is to try to inspire other older people to exercise and to lift weights. But it's as much for me as kind of an accountability thing,
Yeah.
that I'm doing the life that I'm committed to. And I think it's going to pay off. I was at lunch yesterday and there were some friends across the way that I knew from my career, and there was a guy there who had just turned 100 years old. And he was out
Wow.
to lunch with his friends. He had turned 100. I said, Jim, I'm going to be 100 too. Congratulations, because
Yeah.
anybody who makes it to 100, that's an accomplishment. And
No, and especially to be out there in the community with friends at that age.
right,
Because
yeah,
if you could choose lots of quantity but no quality, I don't think anyone would make that choice, right? The fear is usually we want to be able to live longer, but we also want to have a good decent amount of quality of life, which is
right,
probably where most of the
yeah,
people I talk to about weight training and mobility training, which is huge,
yeah.
is it's that quality of life. Like I tell people in who I work with in Recover Life, like you can make your 70s like your 60s or 50s,
Yeah.
especially if you've never trained before. Like you have so much room for improvement that you can really make things work in your favor.
Exactly. It's health span and lifespan, and you want
Yeah.
your health span to be right up there with your lifespan,
Yeah.
uh, so that you're not spending, 5 years immobilized in a nursing home, where you can't really do much. But I'm inspired by older people in nursing homes that are doing group fitness classes
Mhm.
and doing what they can. But before I get to that point, I want to be as strong as possible and live independently and still be able to travel and play with grandkids and enjoy life. I golf with some guys that are 85, 86 years old, and
Yeah.
I figure, boy, that's great. 10 years from now, if I can still be out walking a golf course, swinging a golf club, I might not hit it as far, but enjoying life is part of it. It's that's what it's all about.
And
So
how old are you now, Bernie?
I'm 74. Yeah,
74. And
74.
you mentioned there's 2 points if I can kind of poke a little bit or ask a little bit more on is you mentioned one that you accepted an identity that I'm going to be strong and that I'm going to be healthy. Like for most people, especially that I see that are aging in that 60, 70 range, um, they don't have that. They don't even think it's an option. It's just the mental side is totally pushed off to the idea. Not that they don't want it, but
Right.
it just feels impossible.
Yeah.
How did you get to that point to be ready to accept that identity?
Well, it all starts with making a first decision, and mine was when I retired and I walked into a gym and I said, I'd like to hire a personal trainer. And I'd never had a personal trainer in my life. I've been in gyms, but you'd look at the weightlifting area and, maybe you'd get on the treadmill and walk a little bit. But getting somebody who can, once you make that first decision, somebody who could say, okay, you want to get stronger? Let's start with light dumbbells and, take you through your first workout, and then you just gradually start learning why muscles are important, and you learn from a good personal trainer the right form, the right technique, how much you can lift, what progression is like, starting light, and every time you go back in, adding a little bit more weight to it so that you're not always just working with a 5 pound dumbbell. You're keeping track of, okay, last week I did a 20 pound, this week I'm going to try 25.
Yeah.
Um, and so, but it all starts with the first decision that I'm going to take a step towards my health, towards getting stronger. Um, and that can be, a gym, it could be an online program. But if someone has never really done it before, the investment that I made in personal training and going in a couple of times a week, and having somebody who's an expert uh, in exercise science was the best money I ever spent. It's an invest. It's better than buying municipal bonds or stocks, because the return on that investment is going to be your health span and your lifespan both. So I'd encourage people to think about that. To think about, can I afford doing that? My wife goes to Pilates.
Hmm.
She loves Pilates, and she has a trainer, and she does a one-on-one session in Pilates. Uh, there's a whole menu out there of everything from, Crunch Fitness to what's the gym with all the purple things for $10 a month or
Planet
whatever.
Fitness. Planet.
Planet Fitness, right.
Yeah.
I mean, wherever you are, there's something. My wife is going to something called the Exercise Coach, which is computerized resistance machines, and they do a 20-minute strength workout. She loves it. And I go, great. If it's something you will do with consistency, then that's what it is,
Hmm.
Um, and but it has to be something that will help you build muscle. As I
Hmm.
said, if you just walk and walk and walk and play pickleball or just golf, you're holding yourself back because you're not building muscle, and aging takes it away from us.
Hmm.
Right?
Totally. And you bring up a good point about how talking about this importance of muscle. I want to just set the stage a little bit for some of those who may be asking that question. Maybe they're the pickleballer or they are, someone who likes running or jogging, and they're like, why is muscle so important? And there's two pieces that I have seen, and I'd love to hear your perspective on these, if that's okay, is
Yeah, sure.
one, muscle is what allows us to function. It allows us to interact with the world and do things, right? You know, pick up objects, push things away from us, climb stairs. Like those, a lot of
Yep.
those things are actually, if you struggle with those activities of daily living, it's usually a strength problem, right? And then
Yeah.
the second thing is a big killer is metabolic health. So type 2 diabetes is a classic example
Yeah.
that we see, especially in the nursing home that I work in. A lot of it comes from having low incident it's insulin sensitivity, right?
Yeah.
And so when we build more muscle, it also, as we exercise, becomes more sensitive to insulin. So it can take all that excess sugar that would be damaging your kidneys and damaging the tiny little blood vessels that cause, you know, neuropathy and those nerves, all those things that we worry about sort of doesn't 100% go away, but you solve 90% of that problem by just
Right.
having more muscle. You know, it can
Right.
absorb that. But was that ever a consideration for you, especially the diabetes side, or was that not really a
Well,
thought?
fortunately, I haven't, I was never heavy enough, and metabolically out of whack enough to have high blood sugar.
Hmm.
Uh, and and now I think, I'm at a good weight. It's a stable weight. I
Yeah.
could still stand to lose a few pounds. I'm about 20% body fat, maybe 19%.
Hmm.
And you know, uh, I think my exercise is, as you said, kept me in a good place. Um, if there's another area that is a challenge for me, and you mentioned running and that's building up more aerobic ability, VO2 max, whatever
Yeah.
VO2 stands for.
Yeah.
But having, a greater capacity for that type of exercise. And that's probably my weak point at this point. Uh, I don't really run, but I try to walk at a level where my heart rate gets up, into zone 2 cardio and trying to get it up a little harder. I bought a rowing machine that I do, sprints on my rower, and that gets my heart rate up.
Yeah.
So that's an important part of fitness, mobility and strength. And like I said, it can be daunting to people when they think about all the stuff that if I really want to be fit and healthy, I've got to do all of this, Well,
Hmm.
it's just a decision that we make about um, how we're going to spend our time. And what I've found is that investment of time that I put into it has paid off in how I enjoy other things. I have a lot of energy for my grandkids and doing lots of other stuff. And I think it's because of the investment I put into exercise.
That's wonderful. And kind of underscoring what you mentioned there, the the feeling of I now have energy to give, right? I now have not just, oh, I'm just trying to get through my day, but like I can actually play with my grandkids on the floor or go to their activities and I'm not like drained, right? That's a big thing
Yeah,
a lot of people come
yeah,
to and ask about. I am curious because we have a decade really roughly for you, or I guess over a decade,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
11,
It's been about a decade that I've done
about a
this.
decade.
You
And
know,
and
uh, and the more recently, as I progressed, I got more and more serious,
mhm.
right? You start off slow and you have on and off periods, right? But the last 3 or 4 years, I've been very, very consistent, and it's paying off. I spend a lot of time reading and listening to podcasts, Joe. I've learned so much from uh, you know different podcasts and learning about health and fitness. So instead of listening to the news, which can be depressing these
Yeah.
days, I
Yep.
listen to fitness podcasts, and that
Hey,
gets me a little bit more motivated than the news.
I agree. Oh, and something just to kind of underscore also, you talked about the the opportunity to get into the aerobic space a little bit, right? So
Right.
weight training is huge. It's crucial for aerobics. Is there a kind of acting almost like a case study as we talk about this for you? Is there a limiting factor or a reason why maybe you haven't tried higher intensity biking or haven't tried running or something like that before? Is it? I'm
Yeah.
curious.
Running I've just never enjoyed it. And,
Uh-huh.
uh, now that I'm older, my feet hurt,
Hmm.
I've sprained my ankles a lot. That impact is difficult for me.
Hmm.
Uh, but I find that a run walk I can do, if I'm on
Yeah.
a level surface, I walk and then, you run for 20 seconds and then you walk for 2 minutes and then you run for 30 seconds.
Hmm.
So people can incorporate, into their walks some higher intensity just by doing a slow jog, in addition to the walking. And as I said, I bought a rower, and that's pretty good,
Hmm.
uh, for that also. So, yeah, trying to incorporate both of that into my training, as something that I'm still working on.
Good. 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 And I think we're gonna shift a little bit. We've talked a lot about maybe some of the things that you've done, what kind of got you onto this path here. Um, Tell me about you mentioned briefly that Instagram was an opportunity for accountability, right?
Yeah,
Did you
yeah.
think that you were gonna have, 8,000 or whatever many people that are
Well,
following you and excited to see you succeed? Like, was
yeah,
that your
it's
vision or was it
amazing.
just I'm
Yeah.
logging what I'm doing?
I've always been in the marketing business, so
Uh-huh.
yeah, social media has always fascinated me from the time it started.
Yeah.
And playing around with Instagram and watching other fitness people and what they do, it became a kind of a hobby. Like, okay, I'm going to figure the algorithm out.
Yeah.
What works, right? And what works is 7-second videos with good music, right? And a controversial little question or something like that.
Yeah.
But I mix it up. I've been doing little walk and talk videos of my walking where I have some interesting thought that I can share. And sometimes I put my travel and my golfing on there. But the exercise videos I try to put up to inspire people. Today I was doing a overhead press, right,
Hmm.
with a barbell. And I thought about how important it is to put your bags in the overhead compartment of a
Yes.
airplane. And when I travel, I usually carry my wife's bag and my bag, and so that's a farmer's carry with dumbbells, right?
Yeah.
And so I was thinking of saying something about uh, point of view, I'm the old white-haired guy who can put bags in the overhead compartment and ask everybody else, "Can I help you? Can I help you?" Right?
Yeah.
I don't want to be the elderly traveler that has to ask Joe, "Joe, can you put my bag up for me?"
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, I want to walk on the plane, behind you with your kids or whatever and say, "Hey, can I help you put your bags up?" Right?
Yeah.
Uh, so, coming up with that, but I've actually had one video get 1 million views, and
Wow.
2 or 3 other videos got 600,000, 400,000. So I had to turn off notifications because I kept
Just
getting
bombarding.
right. But it's been really fun to be creative and think of what creative things you can say that would, inspire people and motivate people in 7 seconds,
Yeah.
in 10 seconds, right?
Yeah.
Because people just scroll through that. So it's been a fun hobby, and it does motivate me to get out to my gym and get a workout in because I might have something interesting I could share with other people.
Totally. And have you made any connections with other people through Instagram, either as
Oh yeah,
mentoring or?
it's just amazing. You know that they're not real friends, they're
Hmm.
at least you and I are talking one on one,
Yeah.
but in the social media world, you have all these friends, but we all inspire each other. You know, there's a couple in England that do weight training in their garage. There's a man in Australia, in Melbourne, who has a pacemaker, has been through heart surgery, and he works out on his patio. His name is Bob, and I cheer him on, and he cheers me on. You know, there's a grandpa up in Santa Barbara who, plays with his grandkids, and you know, just a lot of women who are inspiring,
Yeah.
women from Australia and Ireland and all over the country. So it is inspiring to be in that community and to see what other older adults, active agers can do to enjoy life as they age and to get stronger and not decline. So it's a great community. It's inspiring and it's fun.
So I love that because you're right. It's I didn't even think about that, but what you're describing here is you now have access to almost a limitless supply of other interested, I love that term, active agers or older adults who want to age well. And
Yeah,
like you said, even though it's not maybe one-on-one conversations, it's still just seeing someone out there who also wants the same thing you do, who
yeah,
doesn't want to eat ice cream and watch
right.
TV and die in the chair kind of a
Yeah,
thing. They want to be
exactly.
out doing things. I didn't think
Yeah.
about how much community.
There's so many examples of that. You know, there's a woman I started watching. She's in Great Britain, and she was doing jump rope in her backyard, and she was a great jump roper. She's in her late 60s, but then all of a sudden she started doing videos of her in a CrossFit gym,
Oh,
and she's
cool.
teaching herself how to do clean and jerks. You know, at age 67, she's doing CrossFit, and then she's teaching herself how to do handstands. And how many 67-year-olds, will walk into a CrossFit gym and start taking that on? I CrossFit intimidates me. I don't
Mhm.
know that I'll ever get to CrossFit level,
Mhm.
but I get inspired by those other active agers out there who are taking on new challenges in their fitness and making great progress. And it's inspiring to all of us, I think.
I love this. I love this discussion too because the hardest part is like you said, we talked about earlier, accepting the identity that I can be fit, I can be, and I am going to be
Right,
healthy and age well. A common problem that I also see is we tend to assume what happened to our parents and to our grandparents, right? How they
right.
age is what's going to happen to us. Have you had to
Yeah.
battle anything like that before?
Well, my parents have passed away for several years back, but I never remember any of my parents or either one of them exercising.
Hmm.
And my wife's parents died in their early 70s, and I never saw them exercising.
Hmm.
So, back in the 40s and 50s, it just wasn't a thing. And so I never had that role model, which
Yeah.
I think is important for parents and for grandparents to give that role model to their grandkids and their children. I love, there's some podcasts that, the fit dad or the fit parent, with people, dads in particular, and mothers who are working out with their children.
Yeah.
They're exercising, they're lifting weights, and that's so inspiring because they learn from watching us, right? So I love when my grandkids come visit, and I get them out in the gym and get them jumping box jumps and swinging on the TRX and you know having fun with the exercise, and then they see that their old grandpa can get down there with them, right? I've got two 3-year-old grandkids and one 7-year-old. Keep me very,
Hey.
yeah.
That's exciting. And
Yeah.
are do you have so you have those grandkids. Are they close by then or are they out?
Unfortunately not. One is in Los Angeles, and then I have my son is on the East Coast.
Oh
So,
wow. Okay. Yeah.
but they're coming to visit in a week, so they'll be here for a week. So
There you go.
we'll
Well, you
see.
can take them
Yeah,
out there and You can teach them some clean and jerks if you want to.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
So I think as we are kind of wrapping up some of our discussion here, my thoughts go to I think we've tackled a couple of times this, you got to be able to accept the identity. I love that you mentioned that you went and got a personal trainer because that's a easy, actionable step
Yeah.
anyone can make if you live remotely close. Obviously, if you're a farmer in the middle of of Iowa and there's only cornfields next to you, it might be
Yeah.
hard. But if you're in somewhat of a suburban region, like you can get access to in-person personal trainers.
Yeah.
What and I was going to ask about digital online personal trainers. What's been your experience navigating that? Would you recommend someone who's never exercised start online, or do you think you
Well, if
get in
if
person?
I would recommend if you've never exercised before, lifted weights, or done resistance training, to do in person first, because there's a lot of it's not really hands-on, but having somebody there telling you you got to think about you bringing your shoulder blades together, or think about this muscle, and they'll actually tap and go, okay, do you feel it here?
Yeah.
There's a lot of direction and technique uh, that you get with one-on-one and building a relationship with a trainer. And fortunately, I was able to do that. I did that for a couple of years. But then once you get through that, online training is great because one of the big challenges is, okay, I'm going to exercise, but what am I going to do? What's my program? And having somebody develop that program for you and say, okay, you're going to do upper body today, and you're going to do lower body, and these are the 6 exercises, and they're going to be in this order. Then I don't have to think about it. I
Yeah.
open up my phone. There's an app, and there's videos that show me what the exercise is, and there's coaching that goes along with it. I'll take videos of what I do and send it to my online coach. Um, so that can range from $20 a month to $250 a month
Hmm.
for an online coach. And I've paid all of those,
Yeah.
and all of them are valuable. But for as little as $20 a month, you can get an online program. And now there's just tons of them out there. And
Oh yeah.
I've, I've tried lots of them, but I kind of like online programs with people who I think have the right um, mindset about fitness, which is why I like uh, uh, Blakely and Jonathan Fletcher at Digital Barbell, and Jason and Lauren Pack. They have like millions of followers on Instagram, but they've really got a good philosophy about fitness that I like. Um, but back to your question, I think if you can afford it, to start out one-on-one with a personal trainer and learn about um, weight training and resistance training and getting the technique down and doing that for as long as you can afford, 6 months, a year. And then after that, you can continue on your own, and
Hmm.
having an online program, finding something that's good, can then reduce your costs, but gives you a progression in your training, and can keep you motivated and keeps track of where you're going and what you're doing. So
Yeah. In fact, just to give a second witness to it, I am a doctor of physical therapy who specializes in giving exercise prescriptions, and I have other people write my exercise programs for myself, right? Like
yeah,
there's
yeah,
there's
yeah,
something nice about, even though it's kind of like a little bit personal, it's kind of like a chef doesn't always want to cook when they go home, right? Even
yeah,
I find that it's nice to have an outside perspective, frankly, if you're getting more one-on-one coaching, to have someone else that can say, yeah, this is what you're doing, but have you thought about this, right? Have you thought about, okay, maybe we're increasing our weight and we're starting to dip. maybe we need to not think about increasing weight. Let's just focus on increasing repetitions, or let's change tempo, or there's all these tools that a
Right,
coach can use that can just be so helpful that you don't want to have to think about it as the athlete, right?
right.
You want to just go in, do what they tell you, and then you get these amazing results.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So,
Yeah. So, that was my journey and my path, and it's worked for me. Everybody's going to find what they like and what they enjoy. But however you do it as you age, building muscle and getting good nutrition is important, prioritizing protein because
yeah.
to build and save muscle, you need to have a high protein diet.
Hmm.
Uh, so I spend a lot of time, adding up that one macro, trying to get 120 grams of protein a day. And that's not easy.
Hmm.
You really have to be conscious about your food and how much you're getting. And if you're low, go, okay, I'm gonna have a protein shake, uh, you know, to make sure I can reach my target.
Yeah.
Uh, I take creatine because all the
Good.
research, everything that I read says that will help not only with cognition and mental, but your body building up muscle.
Hmm.
Um, but that's about and then protein in a protein shake is about the only supplements. I'm not into biohacking and all those things,
Yeah.
but I think diet is important. Limiting alcohol and not drinking at all if you could get there, and staying active and working on balance and mobility, and then resistance training of some sort. So
Totally.
it's a lot. It's a job. It's an identity that we have to have as older people. Um, you don't want it to take over. You don't have to let it take over your life like it's kind of taken over my life. But uh, but no, it's something that can help us as we age enjoy life more.
Thank you. And that totally answers the next question I was going to ask, which is, I think, just perfect, which was what would you recommend for others to do if they're starting their journey? And I did want to just echo what you said about the protein. If anyone listening to this podcast or watching um, doesn't already know how much protein that they are eating in their day, right? I think that's
Yeah.
one of the first steps is just see like what am I eating? You don't have to change a thing, but if you just it's like opening up your bank account every now and then and just like checking it and seeing
Yeah.
how am I getting enough protein? And
And I think people who aren't thinking about that will be surprised at how little they get
yeah.
and what the recommendation for an older adult who wants to retain and build muscle is 7.7 grams per pound. So
Hmm.
I weigh 160 pounds. So, I'm trying to get about 120 grams of protein a day.
Yeah.
Uh, and that's a lot of protein. So we'll have a protein shake for 30 grams in the morning and, some chicken, at lunch might get me another 30 grams and then, a steak or some other source of protein in the after at the evening meal. And I'm only at 90,
Yeah.
right? And if your typical diet is not enough protein.
Yes.
So I've I've discovered Fairlife shakes in the white bottle at Costco.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're 30 grams of protein and they are very tasty.
Good.
It's like a Fairlife chocolate milk, 30 grams of protein at Costco.
That's
So
wonderful.
that's my backup, and then I'll make a berry shake with almond milk and frozen berries, a scoop of whey protein, and some non-fat yogurt, and blend that up, and that will get me about 35 grams of protein in the morning, 35, 40 grams of protein in the morning.
Yep.
Uh, but you're right, it doesn't happen unless you keep track of things, and right, you've actually got to think about it, because if you've never done it before and you start adding up how much protein you're eating, you'll be surprised that it's not enough.
Yeah. And it's not in your favor, especially with eight. I mean, so I turned 30 this year, so I'm very, very young, but I already looking forward because of my profession and because I work and talk with people like you, like I see how important it is to be able to get protein as early as you can in your life and to
Yeah.
maintain a high protein as long as you can because
Yeah.
uh, it's it's truly amazing what you can do. You mentioned zero point 0.7 per gram a pound of body weight. I know some people who run protocols of 2 grams per pound of body
Oh
weight,
yeah. If you're
and
really
there it
serious
just goes
about
up and up and
bodybuilding.
up. And
Yeah.
and that's the thing about protein is that there is technically upper limits that can be unsafe, but I feel like it's almost impossible to get there. It's you really benefit so much from, zero point 0.7 or even 1 gram per pound of body weight or 1.5, whatever you kind of find is your what you can handle
Right.
from shakes and meat sources and finances, being able to pay for all of that. But I do think protein is a huge part to be able to
Yeah.
maintain what muscle you gain. So
So, if people are thinking about, this is a lot, I'd recommend a couple of other books.
please,
And the one that really struck me recently was Dr. Peter Attia's book, Outlive.
I have it on
Uh,
my shelf
and
right over there.
on your shelf,
Yep.
right there. It's a great book if you want to understand longevity and what exercise and nutrition and metabolic health is all about. It's a little deep, but
Yep.
I listened to it on an audiobook in my car and learned a lot from it. Dr. Gabriel Strong, her book Forever, I think it's Forever Strong, or Gabriel Lyon, I'm sorry, Dr. Gabriel Lyon. Um, she really has a good perspective on the importance of weight training and diet and nutrition. So those are two books that I read in the last year that really helped me understand why protein is important, why strength training is important, why walking isn't enough, um, that, you know, and what the benefits of all this will be for us.
Perfect. And in fact, I'm taking notes on here so I can put links to those books and all of that stuff
Great.
down in the description there. Um, I would say let's close out with just this. I Because it's a new podcast, right? I'm trying to figure out what is going to be our final question we can get from everybody. And I didn't ask
Oh,
this to the first guest, but I just thought of this, and I think this might stick. Is for now, what would you say when you look at 10 years from now? What is the number one thing you hope and pray you're still going to be able to do or enjoy?
oh, uh, it's got to be my grandkids, right? I've got a 7-year-old and two 3-year-olds. So
Hmm.
10 years from now, I want to see my grandson graduate from high school and be able to play with, my grandkids and, uh, family and the people around you are the most important, and to be there for my wife and my son and my daughter. Um, I just went golfing with my son up in St. George, Utah.
Hmm.
Uh, and he was with a college friend of his. So it was these two 41-year-old guys. It was my son's birthday.
Hmm.
And my son said to me, he says, "Thank you, Dad, for working out and doing what you do so you can be here with me." And that meant a lot, that I was 74 and I was able to drive up to St. George and meet my son who came out from the East Coast, and we golfed 4 days in a row and went for hikes in the afternoon after golfing, and for him to say, "Thanks, Dad, I'm glad you're in shape so that you can do this with me," meant a lot. So
Wow.
I just take that 10 years from now, and I still want to be there for my family and enjoying them.
That's excellent. I think that's spot on. I think that's what's the most important thing, right? Is relationships,
Yeah,
family. So,
yeah.
Bernie, it
Yeah.
is an honor and a privilege to have been able to
Oh, this is
sit
fun.
down and chat with you. I hope you know that I came across your account as I started to get on the Instagram side of things, and I was like, I got to talk to this guy. I mean, you're doing amazing work out there, and I hope that we can just keep spreading the good news of just simple steps, right?
Yeah.
Diet, sleep, and exercise that have been known for forever, but we just got to find ways to implement it and adopt that new identity you talked about, that we can
Yeah.
do that even as we age.
We just have to say we're going to live a fit life, and that's who you are. That's who I am, and that's how we go about it. Instagram is great, but I'm like everybody else. I'm getting old, and you know, you'll see a workout, but there's aches and pains and challenges that we all have in life. But the important thing is to just stay at it and have fun.
Totally. Totally, Bernie. Well, hey, I hope we can do this again sometime. It was great
Yeah,
talking.
this has been fun. Yeah, 10 years from now, let's do it again. All right,
Let's do
Joe?
it. I like
All
it.
right.
All right.
Great.
We'll see you, Bernie. Have a good one.
All right, great. I'm gonna click out. I can't wait to see your podcast. Good luck to you.
Definitely. Thank you,
Everything
sir.
that you do.
I
Bye-bye.
appreciate it. Bye bye.